The temperature had dropped to minus 22 degrees. The wind was so fierce it could knock a grown man off his feet. And somewhere out in that blinding white storm, a 6-year-old girl had vanished. Every rescue team in the county had been searching for 3 hours. Helicopters had been grounded. Snowmobiles had turned back. The sheriff had just pulled his team leader aside and whispered the words no one wanted to say out loud. "We may need to call this a recovery," but nobody told that to a 70-pound dog named Duke. Duke, a mixed-breed rescue dog with one torn ear and a scar across his muzzle, had stopped walking 40 minutes ago, right in the middle of a snow-covered field that every trained rescue team had already swept twice. He wouldn't budge. Not for his owner. Not for the sheriff. Not for anyone. And what they found beneath that snowdrift changed everything. If you love real stories like this one, subscribe and hit the notification bell we post every week. Let us know in the comments that you're here. Now, let me take you back to how Marcus and Duke found each other in the first place. To understand what happened that night in Harlow Creek, Montana, you have to understand Marcus Webb. Marcus was 44 years old, a former wildland firefighter who had retired early after a back injury left him unable to work the line. He lived alone on 12 acres at the edge of town in a house that was more wood and memories than anything else. His wife, Elena, had passed away 3 years prior. A quiet, devastating goodbye that had left Marcus hollowed out in ways he didn't know how to explain to people. After Elena died, Marcus didn't talk much. He went to the hardware store. He chopped wood. He drove into town for groceries on Thursdays. And he came home. That was his life. Until Duke. Duke had appeared on his porch one February morning. No collar, no tag, ribs showing through his coat. One ear half torn like he'd lost an argument with a fence. Marcus had stood at the door in his bathrobe, looked at the dog and said, "I am not doing this." He did it anyway. He fed Duke once, then twice. Then Duke didn't leave. Within 2 weeks, the dog slept at the foot of Marcus's bed. Within a month, Duke followed him everywhere, to the barn, to the truck, to the back field where Marcus sometimes went to sit and think about Elena. Marcus's neighbor, an old woman named Dottie Ferris, told him once that Duke had found him on purpose. "Dogs like that, they know," she said. "He came to you because you needed him." Marcus told her that was sentimental nonsense. But he scratched Duke behind the ears when he said it. By the time the blizzard of November rolled in, the one the National Weather Service would later call a historic storm event, Marcus and Duke had been together 2 years. They had their routines. Morning walk at 6, evening check of the fence line. Duke always on Marcus's left side, always matching his pace. Marcus knew his dog the way you know someone you've lived beside through silence and seasons. He knew Duke's happy bark versus his alert bark. He knew the way Duke moved when he was curious versus when he was certain. And that night, when the emergency scanner on Marcus's kitchen counter crackled to life with the words "missing child," 6 years old, last seen near the Halverson property, Marcus was already pulling on his boots. He looked at Duke. Duke was already at the door. The little girl's name was Lily Parrish. She was 6 years old, gap-toothed, obsessed with horses, and according to her mother, absolutely fearless in the way that only children who haven't learned to be afraid yet can be. Her family had moved to Harlow Creek 8 months ago, following her father's new job managing a feed supply operation out near Route 9. Earlier that evening, Lily had been playing in the yard while her mother, Dana, watched from the kitchen window. The storm had already started, light flurries, nothing alarming. Dana had turned away for what she described as 5 minutes, maybe less. When she looked back, Lily was gone. The gate at the back of the yard was open. It led to a field, which led to the tree line, which led to nothing anyone wanted to think about. Dana called out. She ran. She searched the yard, the barn, the neighbor's property. Then she called 911. By the time the first sheriff's deputy arrived, the flurries had become a full whiteout. The temperature was dropping 3 degrees every hour. A child in a winter coat could survive the conditions, but not indefinitely. Not without shelter. And the longer the search ran, the narrower that window became. Search teams divided into grids. Dogs from the County K-9 unit were deployed but quickly became overwhelmed by the scent confusion that comes with heavy snowfall. The storm was wiping tracks and sent trails nearly as fast as they formed. 3 hours in, the command post was losing hope. Marcus arrived at the edge of the search perimeter with Duke on a lead. He introduced himself to the incident commander, a woman named Captain Rosa Delgado, who looked at him with the polite wariness that emergency professionals reserve for well-meaning civilians. "He's not a trained search dog," she said. "No," Marcus agreed. "But he's found things before. Lost cattle. A neighbor's kid once, 2 years back, just wandered into the tree line." Captain Delgado looked at Duke. Duke looked at Captain Delgado. She nodded. "Stay outside the primary grid. If he signals something, radio it in immediately. Do not disturb any evidence area." Marcus clipped the lead to his belt loop so his hands were free and let Duke set the pace. What happened next, Marcus would describe later in a voice still rough with disbelief. He didn't search. He walked, like he already knew. Duke moved east, away from the primary search zone, cutting across a wide-open field that the K-9 teams had already cleared. His nose was down for the first few minutes, then up, reading the air. Then he stopped. A flat stretch of snow. No features. No landmarks. Nothing. Duke sat down. Marcus waited. Duke didn't move. He pulled out his radio. Captain Delgado arrived with 2 deputies within 4 minutes. She looked at the field. She looked at Duke, sitting absolutely still in the snow, his eyes locked on a point about 3 feet in front of him. "What is he indicating?" she asked. "I don't know exactly," Marcus said, "but he won't move. And when Duke won't move, there's always a reason." One of the deputies, a young man named Officer Trent Calloway, stepped forward and poked at the snowdrift with a long probe pole. Standard search procedure. He hit resistance at about 18 inches. He stopped, probed again. Different angle. Resistance again, but softer this time. Not rock. Not wood. He looked at Delgado. They started digging. The snow at the edge of the field had drifted against a natural depression. A low spot in the terrain that would have been invisible to anyone not standing directly over it. The wind had built the drift in layers, packing it dense and smooth across the top so that it looked like every other stretch of snow for miles around. But underneath, at 14 inches down, they found a bright pink mitten. "Go slow," Delgado said, her voice dropping. "Everybody go slow." At 20 inches, Officer Calloway's gloved hand found something warm. It took them 4 more minutes to carefully clear the snow from around the small hollow that had formed. A survival pocket, the kind that can happen when a child falls into a drift and their body heat creates a tiny airspace around them. Dangerous. Fragile. The difference between life and death measured in inches of snow and degrees of temperature. Lily Parrish was curled on her side, her knees drawn to her chest, her eyes closed. She was breathing. "I've got her. She's breathing. She's breathing." Calloway had her in his arms before he finished the sentence. Delgado was already on the radio calling in the medical team. Marcus stood back. His hands were shaking. He looked down at Duke. Duke had not moved from his spot. He was watching the deputy carry the little girl with the focused, satisfied attention of an animal who has just finished the task he set out to do. Marcus put his hand on Duke's head and didn't say anything for a long time. Lily was airlifted to Cascade Regional Medical Center, 20 miles south. She was treated for mild hypothermia and a small cut on her forehead from her fall into the drift. The attending physician told her parents that she had been extraordinarily lucky. The hollow in the snow had preserved just enough warmth and oxygen to keep her stable. Another 20 to 30 minutes, in the doctor's honest estimation, and the outcome would likely have been different. Dana Parrish, who had spent the last 3 hours at the command post, wrapped in a thermal blanket and unable to stop shaking, was allowed to see her daughter at 11:47 that night. The two of them held onto each other without speaking for a very long time. Lily's first words, reportedly, were, "I wasn't scared, Mom. I was just cold." The story might have ended there. A near tragedy avoided. A family whole again. Another harrowing night in a Montana winter fading into the quiet relief of morning. But Harlow Creek is a small town. And small towns don't forget. Within 2 days, the story had spread. The local paper ran it on the front page. Local man and dog locate missing girl in historic storm. A TV crew drove up from Great Falls. Someone posted about it on social media, and by the end of the week, Marcus Webb's name had been read by over 3 million people who had never heard of Harlow Creek, Montana. Marcus gave exactly one interview to the local paper and he kept it short. "Duke found her," he said. "I just followed him." When the reporter asked him what he thought had drawn Duke to that exact spot, Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I don't know how to explain it," he said. "I've stopped trying. He knew. That's all I can tell you. He knew and he wouldn't leave. And I've learned, with Duke, when he won't leave something, you'd better pay attention." Captain Rosa Delgado submitted a formal commendation recognizing Marcus and Duke's role in the rescue. Duke received what is almost certainly the first bone-shaped certificate of appreciation ever issued by the Harlow Creek Sheriff's Department. Dana Parrish asked if she could come meet Duke in person. She showed up on a Tuesday with Lily, who had a drawing she had made, a crayon dog with enormous ears and a yellow halo, and a pan of homemade cinnamon rolls. Lily walked straight up to Duke, put both arms around his neck, and buried her face in his fur. Duke sat very still and let her. Marcus, who hadn't cried in 3 years, not even at Elena's funeral, not even on the hard nights, had to walk into the barn for a few minutes. When he came back out, Lily was showing Duke her drawing. "That's you," she told the dog seriously. "You have a halo because you're a hero." Duke thumped his tail on the snow. There is a conversation that happens every year in search and rescue circles about the limits of technology, about thermal drones and ground-penetrating radar and GPS tracking and all the tools that modern emergency response has built to help find the missing. And those tools are real and they matter and they save lives. But there is something that trained canine handlers have known for a very long time, something that the researchers who study canine cognition have been working for decades to understand, and it is this: dogs perceive the world in ways that we do not fully comprehend. They read scent across distances and timescales that seem impossible. They register information that no instrument we have yet built can detect. Duke was not a trained search and rescue dog. He had no certification, no hours in the field, no formal methodology. He was a stray with a torn ear who had shown up on a grieving man's porch one February morning and decided to stay. And yet, there is something else this story is about, though. Something beyond the dog. It is about a man who, when the emergency scanner crackled on a freezing night, didn't hesitate. Who drove out to the edge of a blizzard with his dog and said, "Let me help." Who had learned, through 2 years of quiet companionship, to trust something he couldn't explain. Marcus Webb lost a lot when he lost Elena. He lost the certainty that mornings would be good, the ease of coming home to someone, the particular comfort of being known. But somewhere in those 2 years with Duke, in the morning walks and the evening fence checks and the back field where he sometimes went to sit, he had found something again. Not a replacement for what he'd lost. Something different, a kind of attentiveness, a reason to pay attention. On the night of the blizzard, that attentiveness brought a little girl home. Lily Parrish is 7 now. She has a picture of Duke on her bedroom wall. Not the crayon drawing, but a real photograph her mother framed. She talks about him at school. She has told several of her classmates that when she grows up, she wants to train rescue dogs. Marcus Webb still lives on his 12 acres at the edge of Harlow Creek. Every morning at 6, he and Duke walk the property line. Duke always on his left side, always matching his pace.